Hey everyone, today we are doing a rhetorical analysis of President Joe Biden's inaugural address. I'm going to discuss some important aspects of this passage, but this analysis will not be exhaustive, so please put your own points of analysis in the comments. I'll also link the full speech in the description box below. I've divided the speech into 5 chunks. Feel free to pause the video to read each chunk before watching me analyze it. So first, President Biden starts off with some alliteration. As you can see from the underlined letters, he repeats the letters D, H, and R when he says democracy's day, history and hope, renewal and resolve. This creates a steady rhythm that immediately draws the reader's attention and shows how carefully the speaker has chosen his words. President Biden then employs an analogy comparing America's recent struggles to a crucible, which is a contraption that subjects metals to extremely high temperatures. Similarly, America has faced extreme pressure in the form of insurrection and a pandemic, but the speaker emphasizes that this test will not break the country, but rather make it stronger. In this highlighted portion, President Biden actually explicitly states what tone he wants to set for the speech by listing quintessential American values: restlessness, boldness, and optimism. Therefore, he wishes to reflect all of these qualities in the tone of his speech, and most of all, he wishes for his speech to be rooted in hope for the future, or the nation that we can be. Soon, the speaker alludes to the preamble to the Constitution when he says, "We the people who seek a more perfect union," which is taken directly from the text of the preamble. By referring to we the people, the president is explaining that the onus of America's success is not on the individual, but on the people as a whole. This allusion implies that the speaker will continue to talk about the message of unity later on. In this passage, President Biden repeats the words "much too" in order to show how large the task is before us, but how large the reward is as well. For although America has much to repair and to heal, it also has the potential to reaffirm its values and create a more equal and just world. The speaker later appeals to logic, or logos, through grim statistics. He explains that America has lost more lives during the pandemic than in all of World War II, and that the cry for racial justice has been 400 years in the making. All of these numbers show that America not only faces urgent challenges that have emerged in the past year, but it also must tackle long-standing challenges that have been around for centuries. Here is the second part of the speech. President Biden personifies planet Earth when he says that the cry for survival comes from the planet itself. He imbues the planet with human qualities to show that if society ignores the issue of climate change, all of humanity will be doomed. Next is an example of intertextuality, which allows the speaker to weave another text into his own. He includes a direct quote from President Abraham Lincoln as he was signing the Emancipation Proclamation, since Lincoln said, "And my whole soul is in it." President Biden then says, "My whole soul was in it today. My whole soul is in this." So he tweaks President Lincoln's quote slightly to apply it to himself. Therefore, President Biden is knitting himself into President Lincoln's words, showing that he too is devoting himself to the cause of American unity. You'll find that President Biden keeps invoking the spirit of Lincoln throughout this speech because he aspires to heal a divided nation just as Lincoln once did. Next is an example of anaphora, since the speaker repeats the words "we can" at the beginning of several consecutive sentences. President Biden uses anaphora to illustrate all of his policy goals, which include boosting employment, delivering racial justice, and ensuring everyone has access to health care. He then acknowledges a key counterargument, or the idea that it would be foolish to talk about unity because America is so divided. However, he debunks this counterargument by saying that America has certainly faced division before, but it has almost always found the strength to unite. The speaker juxtaposes, or contrasts, the idea of equality with the reality of racism, nativism, fear, and demonization to show that there is a gap between the America that exists now and the America we want to become. He also references the Declaration of Independence when he says, "The ideal that we're all created equal," to show that we are still trying to live up to the promises outlined in our very first founding document. Through juxtaposition, President Biden explains that he is not naive, but he does know that in cases of crisis, such as the Civil War, the Great Depression, and World War II, people stepped up to the plate to help their fellow Americans. So he's calling upon people to do that once again. Later, the president uses parallelism when he repeats a similar grammatical structure. He says, "There is no peace, only bitterness and fury. No progress, only exhausting outrage. No nation, only a state of chaos." So he repeats two phrases starting with the words no and only to show that people can't accomplish anything when they constantly berate and attack each other. Here is the third chunk. In this portion, President Biden issues clear calls to action, including listen to one another, hear one another, show respect to one another. These strong calls to action are meant to encourage the audience members to evaluate their own roles in sowing division and instead start anew. He also says that we must reject the culture in which facts themselves are manipulated and even manufactured, and that conveys a key theme. In order for us to unite and succeed, we must agree upon what is the truth and reject lies. It's a theme that's also highlighted in George Orwell's book, 1984. I'll put a link to my annotation video of that book in the description below. Next, the speaker alludes to two key events that took place in Washington, D.C. The March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom, where Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. made his famous "I Have a Dream" speech, and the 1913 Women's Suffrage Parade, in which women marched for the right to vote the day before President Woodrow Wilson's inauguration. These allusions show the speaker's awareness of his own place in history and his acknowledgement that he and Vice President Kamala Harris stand upon the shoulders of everyone who fought for justice before them. This highlighted excerpt is a direct quote from President Lincoln's Gettysburg Address. Just as Lincoln honored the soldiers who died at the Battle of Gettysburg, President Biden pays tribute to the soldiers buried at Arlington Cemetery to show that he looks to their example to defend democracy. President Biden then employs a metaphor to compare the right to peacefully protest to guardrails. Guardrails protect people from harm, and not only does the right to peaceful protest protect protesters from harm, but it also protects everyone's freedom of expression. In this section, the speaker asks and answers his own question, again reiterating essential American values. The fact that he keeps referring back to these values shows that the speaker really wants Americans to remember these qualities so that they are not lost. Here is the fourth chunk. In this section, President Biden very briefly explains an anecdote that he believes will resonate with his audience. He paints a picture of his own father worrying about his family's financial struggles and recognizes that many families feel the same way today. This anecdote hones in on one of President Biden's signature traits, empathy. This underlined passage states, "Here's the thing about life. There's no accounting for what fate will deal you." The subtext of this sentence, or the message that isn't stated outright, is that the speaker knows how capricious and devastating life can be due to the tragic deaths of his first wife, his daughter, and his son. This subtext contributes to the rhetorical appeal of ethos, which bolsters the speaker's credibility because he's speaking from personal experience. This underlined portion is also an allusion to Stoic philosopher Marcus Aurelius, who said, "Love the hand that fate deals you, and play it as your own, for what could be more fitting?" This quote indicates that in a card game you have to play with the hand or the cards that you're dealt, and life follows the same rule. So President Biden also uses wordplay when he says that sometimes you need a hand, and other days you have to lend a hand. I find it interesting that the speaker combines this somber topic of loss and life's unpredictability with language that is playful in a way. Here's another important line, "And we can still disagree." Here, President Biden asserts that his goal is unity of purpose, not perspective. We should share a common goal, but we can have different opinions on how to achieve that goal. President Biden alludes to the Bible with this quote, which suggests that the audience must have hope for the future, for better days are ahead. The The speaker himself is a devout Catholic, so he uses allusions not only to show who he admires, Lincoln for example, but also how important his faith is to him. This next rhetorical device is something you may not have heard of, antimetaboly. It basically means that a phrase is repeated in reverse order. So the speaker says that we'll lead not merely by the example of our power, but by the power of our example, which suggests that America should show a commitment to democracy and human rights, rather than showing a display of force. And next is a symbolic moment of silence, which allows the audience to reflect on the lives of the hundreds of thousands of people who have passed away during the pandemic. As someone who knows grief well, the speaker is giving the audience the chance to acknowledge their own grief. This is the fifth and last chunk. Here are multiple rhetorical questions that ask the audience members whether they are willing to step up and start working for a better tomorrow. The question, "Will we master this rare and difficult hour?" reminds me of a line from President John F. Kennedy's Inaugural Address, which asks, "Will you join in that historic effort?" You can find the footprints of past presidents all over this speech, which is definitely intentional. President Biden discusses an important theme of looking to the future in this underlined portion. He asks the audience what story they would like to tell their children, and by doing so, he is asking what must be done now to help future generations. These sentences are examples of antithesis, which depicts stark contrasts in a parallel fashion. President Biden contrasts power and possibilities, personal interest and public good, light and darkness, and other concepts to promise that he will serve the American people in good faith. In this large chunk of text, the speaker creates an aspirational image of the American story that was mentioned before to prove that he has a clear vision of what this story should be, and therefore has a clear vision to guide the country forward. Lastly, President Biden ends powerfully in the present tense. He says, "So with purpose and resolve, we turn to those tasks of our time." He could have easily said, "We will turn," but instead he says, "We turn," implying that he's ready to get to work immediately, and he wants the audience to join him. I hope you enjoyed this video. Remember to comment below with your own thoughts on this speech, and please like and subscribe to see more rhetorical analyses, writing tutorials, and annotation videos. I will see you next time.